Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Cover One Roundup. Here live every Monday on the Cover One YouTube channel, or subsequently wherever you listen to your podcasts. I am your host, Kyle Silagyi, joined this and every week by David Fox. And this is an episode that I certainly didn't want to be making this week. I know, David, you certainly did not want to be making this episode this week. No one watching this episode wanted this to be the episode that they were watching this week, but unfortunately, this is the world that we live in. The Buffalo Bills lose in the divisional round to the Kansas City Chiefs by the score of, 42-36, I believe, or something stupid and crazy like that. Overtime loss came down to the wire. One could argue that the Bills won the game like 2 or 3 times. At least 2 or 3 times they had the game won. You hold the lead twice with under 2 minutes left. Statistically, it's a statistical anomaly that you lose that game, but we'll get into all of this and more, I'm sure. But yeah, I think that's all we're going to, you know what you're here for. We're going to talk about our takeaways from this game and just look back on the season as a whole, whether or not it was a success, stuff like that. But before we do any of that, this podcast and Cover One in general are brought to you by Underdog Fantasy. Underdog Fantasy is a relatively new fantasy football app that Cover One has partnered with for this season on Underdog Fantasy. You can do daily fantasy, player props, player parlays, all that good stuff that you want out of your fantasy football. You can do that. Using promo code COVER1, you get a free $10 with a deposit of $25 or more. Again, that is promo code COVER1 on Underdog. Thank you so much for sponsoring. All right, so David, how are you?
My disappointment is immeasurable.
Is your day ruined?
And my day is ruined.
Oh, we are going off. Oh, we have a nice comment here. Where is Judge and Tilt? Thank you so much for watching. They are on. That is the air raid hour. They will be on in 2 hours.
9 o'clock. 9 o'clock for those guys. You're stuck with us for now.
We are also 2 white guys with beards.
That's right. That's hardly a difference.
That's a lot of Cover One content, but we can we provide decent analysis. Yes, it was just a heart-wrenching game. Yeah. It was a good game offensively, at least, but I think all Bills fans can look back on this game and just think objectively it is one of the greatest NFL games in history, and I would have loved to have watched it without any emotional attachment. I would have loved to have been a Jaguars fan watching that game and just be like, oh, wow, is this what good football is? That it was a clinic in what the NFL wants the game to be today. Yeah. Not a whole lot of defense, a lot of explosive plays from the quarterbacks. And unfortunately, it's just the Bills coming out on the losing end here. So before we get into any of these segments, our well-designed segments, including fan favorite that we debuted last week. What did Josh Allen do last week? Which I said, David, I was like, this is such a good idea. This could get some spin-off buzz. People might approach me and try to buy that segment and make it its own podcast. I will not, all I'll say is I've had some discussions. I won't say with the company, but I'll just say that which company I've had these discussions with, but it rhymes with BXEM. I've had great discussions. They want to spin off the What Did Josh Allen Do Last Week segment into its own podcast. But before we do that, just what are your overarching thoughts from this game?
I know we'll get more detailed about this in particular, but oh man, Josh Allen is just the best. He's just what a performance he had. Early on they were definitely playing it safe. They were going with a lot of check downs. They were kind of feeling things out, kind of going with the run a little bit more. And then they were down by 9 points, and they were like, nope. If we're going to win this game, we're going to win it because Josh Allen won it for us. And that's when he threw.
And he did twice.
And that's when he threw that 75-yarder to Gabe Davis. That throw still astounds me because the Chiefs didn't play that poorly. They didn't. They played the deep coverage correctly. And Josh Allen was just like, it doesn't matter. I will just outthrow your coverage.
Right.
Like people talk about out kicking your coverage on like punts or whatever. That was outthrowing the coverage. It was correct. They were deep enough for every other quarterback that wasn't Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes. So that's it. Like the fact that he made that throw, absurd. And then to go on, what was it? Probably I think it was a 5-minute drive to get that first go-ahead touchdown with 1:54 left. I don't know where you were at, but I was at a Bills backers bar here in Florida called Buffalo Chips. That place went nuts. And I looked at it. I looked at that clock, and I was like, 1:54, Kansas City still has 3 timeouts. They can still score.
Mm-hmm.
And that's exactly what happened. But they scored too quick because there was 1:04 left, and the Bills still had all their timeouts. I was like, Bills can still score. And they did. And I am telling you, when Gabe Davis caught his fourth touchdown, I literally was like, I'm not kidding. I was on top of a table, like about to start jumping up and down.
About to go through it, yeah.
I was losing my mind. I could not believe what had happened. And you look at the clock and you just say 13 seconds. It should be done. It should be done. This should be over. And it isn't. And we know the rest of that. And we can talk about the kickoff. We can talk about the defensive strategy when the Chiefs still had at least 2 of their timeouts, I think, if not all 3.
Mm-hmm. I think they had 3.
Yeah. Which, by the way, for Andy Reid to still have all 3 of his timeouts at the end of the game is like kind of astonishing in and of itself.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, just very weird. And honestly, there was still part of me that thought, Harrison Butker, he's missed a field goal. He's missed an extra point. He might this might just not be his night. He just might miss this one. I didn't really think it. I didn't want to actually say it because I still, like, I've said this before, like, there's 3 surefire kickers. I think I have to add 4 after that Cincinnati-Tennessee game. Surefire kickers in the NFL where you feel like they line up, they're kicking it, and it's going to be good. So Justin Tucker, Harrison Butker for the Chiefs, Tyler Bass, and Evan McPherson. All AFC kickers, by the way. The AFC just has quarterbacks and kickers. Like the AFC is here to score points.
That is a great indie band name. Is quarterbacks and kickers.
Quarterbacks and kickers.
Yeah, but just going off that before we get into the segment here, which that again, all this podcast is you teeing up great segues for me, and then me being like, yes, that's a great segue, but I'm not doing it.
Listen. I'm here to do my 111th. I don't know what you're doing, but I'm here to do my 111th.
I'm here to make weird decisions along the way, much like Sean McDermott. But this was – I've watched a lot of Bills football. This was the first game that I've ever watched where I felt physically sick. Like, I could not sleep for hours afterwards because my stomach was just in knots. It was awful. I was pacing around my house watching this game. It was just – not a pretty sight. So this launches into our segment here. What did Josh Allen do last week? This is the segment where we talk about what Josh Allen did last week. Now, I've never claimed to be a smart person, but what I know, right? When I came up with this segment last week, I still think it's a great segment. It's absolutely a great segment. Right. I still think it's one of the best maybe in the history of the podcast and Bills podcasting in general. But I will admit that the timing is a bit strange because now this is the last week where we will know what Josh Allen did. Yeah. Like, we can confirm because like 2 weeks from now, it'll be like, what did Josh Allen do this week? According to Twitter, he ordered Chipotle off of DoorDash, right? Like that's going to be
He tried to get Dawson Knox to play Xbox Live with him.
exactly. This is what this segment's going to evolve into. And I think that's why I love it, actually. I do like the idea that we're going to have this great football analysis while also talking about Josh Allen's DoorDash order. I do like the idea of that. But anyway, so Josh Allen in this game was incredible, right? It's becoming, we're reaching the point where it is kind of repetitive and not surprising to say that Josh Allen was incredible. We are at the point where like each and every week he is putting up some of the greatest quarterback performances that I have ever seen. Yesterday, he was 27 of 37 for 329 yards, 4 touchdowns, all of which went to Gabriel Davis. Also had 68 yards on the ground, a lot of designed runs yesterday, most of which were unstoppable. And then he was also good, when he scrambled, when he tried to take off and try to make something happen out of nothing. This hurts to say, but he ends the playoffs with 9 touchdowns, 0 turnovers, 771 yards, and 14 incompletions. Only had 5 more incompletions than total touchdowns.
Yeah.
It truly sucks that the Bills did not win yesterday and go on to the Super Bowl, because had Josh Allen continued this pace, we would look back on this postseason from Josh Allen as maybe the greatest single postseason run from a quarterback in NFL history.
Since Joe Flacco.
He'd be an elite company up there with Joe Flacco. But it just sucks for numerous reasons, but that it's not, obviously we'll remember it, but I don't think the league is going to remember what Josh Allen accomplished in these 2 games, because it ended after 2 games. But boy, was he incredible after these or throughout these last 2 games. And just the throws, man, as you said earlier, the Gabe Davis long touchdown, there were 3 long Gabe Davis touchdowns, but it just a lot of throws. Like yesterday, I think he only had 1 truly bad throw that I can think of off the top of my head, where I was like, oh, that's not a great throw. It was like he tried to get it to Knox along the line of scrimmage on the outside, and he just kind of misjudged
it. Floating that, and
right. But
and the camera got right to him. He was like, no, that's on me. That's
exactly.
On me.
That is 1 bad throw out of
in 2 games.
In 2 games that I'm saying oh yeah, that wasn't a great throw. Just incredible. And again, I am only 20. I have to remember how old I am. I'm 24 years old. I never watched.
It's hard to keep track of.
I know, right?
After you reach 21, you're like, who cares?
It doesn't matter anymore. But anyway, I never watched Jim Kelly play, but look, you'd be hard pressed to tell me that Jim Kelly was a better quarterback than Josh Allen at this point. I don't know if I'd believe you. So I think I'm ready to crown Josh Allen as the greatest quarterback in NFL history. No, Bills history. Sorry.
Someone clip that. We're using that later.
No, I meant Bills history. That's what I meant. Oh no, God, he's the greatest quarterback in Bills history. I'm ready to crown him.
Shooting yourself in the foot, just like
truly. No, it's because I wrote down where does he rank in the NFL, and I looked down and I messed myself up. But so that is a question that I'll post you in a question here. Where does he rank in the NFL right now? And it's got to be top 2. But for my money, he is the greatest quarterback in Bills history, and he's only 4 years deep. I hate moral victories. I am not a fan of moral victories in general. And this I understand, how the Lions want to take moral victories out of this year, but this certainly isn't the year that Bills and Bills fans should be taking moral victories out of. We shouldn't look back on the season and be like, oh, they did this, and this well. It's like, no, this was a team designed to win the Super Bowl, and they were talented enough to go for the Super Bowl. All of that being said, it is hard not to watch yesterday's game or just look back on the season in general and not think damn, Josh Allen is incredible, and he's 26 years old, and this is going to be a fun decade here. So, David, you already kind of gave your thoughts on Josh Allen, but your thoughts on his game yesterday, his season, and where does he rank in the league right now?
Game yesterday was just unbelievable. I mean, he is just. I tweeted this yesterday. I had to amend it, and so I'll need to explain this. So we're gonna dive a little deep into the mental psychosis that is David Fox. So I don't know about you, Kyle, but I am a big Star Wars fan, and
Moderately
something.
sized Star Wars fan, yes.
Okay, that's fair. Something they've been doing recently in the last year or so has been re-releasing some older Legends books that they call Essential Legends. One of these books is called Shatterpoint, in which Mace Windu.
Someone's gonna tune in and be like, "What is this show? Where did they get to
I'm
this
going somewhere with this.
conversation?"
It's not worth it, but I'm going somewhere with this. So there you go, Josh.
Thank you. I said 26.
Thank you.
I said 26.
Oh, God.
Thank you.
God, I'm older than Josh Allen. That makes me sad. Anyway, so Mace Windu is a Jedi who is able to see the shatter points of people and things, like the one thing that can like crack and destroy their whole being, essentially. I tweeted after the touchdown with 1:54 left, I think. I tweeted, the Chiefs have a shatter point. His name is Josh Allen. And then after the game, I had to add a tweet below that said, the Bills have a shatter point, and his name is Patrick Mahomes.
Mm-hmm.
Sad. Yeah. I mean, for as perfect, almost perfect a postseason that that Josh Allen played, Josh Allen is, I think Josh Allen is the best quarterback in the NFL that isn't Patrick Mahomes. Because what Patrick Mahomes did yesterday was just equally absurd. Just the way he just kept evading pressures and just knew exactly where to hit throws. I mean, we talk about like Josh Allen and his physical talent and ability, and that's obvious. Like Mahomes has that as well. But I think what people don't necessarily understand about both quarterbacks, or at least don't give enough credit to for both quarterbacks, is how smart they are. Like Josh Allen has pretty much full command of that offense. He checks plays and adjusts things and, calls his own audibles when he needs to. Mahomes is very similar in that regard. I mean, he knows where to throw, he knows where to adjust, he knows how to get his guys into the right position, and he knows how to adjust his arm angles to, get behind a 6'6" Gregory Rousseau's 83-inch wingspan to deliver a dart. I mean, it's incredible. And it's sure it helps having a Tyreek Hill and a Travis Kelce, but like the Bills have a Stephon Diggs and a Gabriel Davis and a Dawson Knox. Like the good quarterbacks have good players around them. Like that's just reality.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, Patrick Mahomes just put together an equally incredible performance, because you could probably say Josh Allen was the better quarterback in that game until you gave Patrick Mahomes the ball back with 13 seconds left, because those two are probably the only quarterbacks where you could say 13 seconds left, need to get into field goal range. No problem.
Yeah. They'll figure it out. It's just, I cannot put Allen above Mahomes, especially after yesterday. Comparable, insane games, but obviously Mahomes has more accolades and stuff like that. So no one can realistically put Allen above Mahomes. But the fact that it's a conversation that can be had, right? Like Mahomes is a guy who is largely looked at as a generational talent, like could realistically go down as the greatest quarterback of all time one day, maybe. The fact that we have a quarterback in Buffalo that, like, if you say like, no, I like Allen better, and you won't get weird looks, like people could be like, okay, yeah, I understand that. It's very cool. Spin rates. Mahomes did not outplay Allen. I will agree. I will agree that Mahomes did not outplay Allen. They went toe for toe. It was a fight to the death boxing match. And
I don't know anybody can really like justify, oh yeah, Mahomes like completely outplayed Josh Allen. It's like, no, I don't think first of all, I don't think anybody's saying that anyway. But it's just like, these two are about as equal as you can get. And largely because they're very equally like talented and gifted. They're very similar players. They just are. And I thought that was like really funny that when Mahomes came out, there were a lot of there were people who doubted him and his ability to translate into the NFL, which was like fair. But I think everyone felt better about his chances when he went to Kansas City and could sit behind Alex Smith and be with Andy Reid and at the time Matt Nagy and everybody that was there. Like everybody was like, okay, if there was a place where this guy could succeed, it's gonna be here. And then when Josh Allen came to the NFL, nobody really thought much of that. I mean, there were so many people that were like, oh my gosh, this dude is just not it. He's like every other tall, big, strong-armed QB that comes to the draft every once in a while. He's just not going to be it. And the first couple of years, I mean, it didn't look like they were wrong. I mean, his rookie year probably went as well as it could have, especially given just like the fact that he's throwing to Andre Holmes and Kelvin Benjamin for the first like 7 weeks. Like that's what are you gonna do with that?
And Kelvin Benjamin did not want to be here. Like I remember
oh my god.
Sorry to cut you off, but I remember being in the locker room one time. Kelvin Benjamin was already in the locker room, showered and had gone home by the time the majority of the other receivers had come in from practice. And he like wasn't on the injury report or anything like that. So it was just he just wanted to go home. And the Bills soon after did send him home.
Man needed that Popeye's chicken biscuit.
Uh-oh. All right. Sorry, continue.
Yeah, I mean, to be able to, so in his first year, probably went as well as you could expect for someone as raw as he was. Second year, very clear improvements. They made improvements to the offense, getting an actual offensive line in front of him, getting actual receivers to throw to. He gave John Brown his best season as an NFL player. Like that he was a great player for the Bills that year. And then but then after that, it was still like, there's just these times though where he makes dumb decisions or he's just not accurate enough when he's supposed to be. And especially when the Texans playoff game ends the way that it does, you're kind of just like, where he was just in basically full meltdown mode. It was kind of just like, oh boy, how confident do you actually feel? Then 2020 happens. He's amazing, borderline MVP candidate. Actually got MVP votes. And then the thought process became, okay, is this just a 1-year thing though? Can he actually replicate this? And the answer is yes. And for as inconsistent as the offense was at times throughout this season, and it definitely was, some of that is not on Josh Allen. I mean, they struggled to get a run game going until like late in the season, like right, that the second half of that Bucs game. Yeah, like they really just could not figure out what they wanted to do there, and the constant O-line shuffling didn't help that. But whatever. Regardless of all that, like Allen still had amazing games, and particularly in the postseason, like we always, Bills fans always talk about when the spotlight is on, Josh Allen shows up, and that was not more obvious and plain to see than in these last two games against the Patriots and the Chiefs. It's a shame that the rest of the team, particularly the defense, couldn't finish it off for him. But, man, just how do you not leave this season feeling amazing about the fact that Josh Allen is your quarterback? Because now every other team is looking at the Bills saying, really wish we had a Josh Allen. And Chiefs fans are the only ones that get to say, oh, so that's what it's like when when that's the other side of this, right? We're not used to this. We're usually on the side that has the Josh Allen because we have Patrick Mahomes. But now we have someone else doing that to us. This is what it feels like.
Yeah, that's one of the things I said this morning, just trying to rationalize what happened. I was like, Josh Allen, if he's not already there, is dangerously close to the level of like he will just win you games. Like regardless of what else your team is doing, he is going to win you football games. And you can make the argument that he's already been there for 2 years at this point, but I mean it is now undeniable. Like yesterday, there was a tweet, I forget who sent it, but there was a tweet.
Greg coming in with the hot take.
That's a thank you, Greg, for being so brave and
Yes.
sharing your thoughts.
So brave.
But yeah, that is hashtag brave tweet. But like I lost my train of thought. But no, like we are at the point where, or somebody tweeted something along the lines of the Bills beat any other NFL team yesterday besides the Chiefs. Like yesterday, the Bills just ran into the best team in the league with 1A at quarterback, and unfortunately, I mean that's what it comes down to, is the defense can't make a stop nor a play. And they
and the unfortunate part of the whole defensive breakdown late in the game was that for most of that game, coverage was on point, like at least through like 2.5 quarters, which like most teams can't keep up with Mahomes for a quarter or a drive. Like that's to be able to at least slow them down. That mattered. But when you're on the field as much as they were, and you get to the end of the game, and it's just a physically exhausting game to begin with, and then emotionally exhausting because they know everything is happening right now. They understand the gravity of this game. As it gets to the end, you're kind of just, it's tough. And you could see it on the Bills and Chiefs defense. It's because Chiefs defense came to play too. Let's be honest. Like Melvin Ingram, like I'm kind of mad at the Steelers for giving up Melvin Ingram and and letting the Chiefs get him, because Melvin Ingram gave Spencer Brown some really bad reps.
I don't understand how he sat in free agency all summer.
For the entire summer.
All season. I would just
an amazing pass
look.
rusher was just sitting out there. The Steelers were like, let's use him in week 1 against the Bills, and then never use him again.
It's the disrespect. They give him a single-digit number, and he just runs over the Bills. No, I would like occasionally look throughout, the summer on Wikipedia, like, has anyone signed him yet? No. Like, what is going on? Why doesn't he have a team? He's very good, and he is still very good. Maybe he gets paid this year. I mean, he's proved it time and time again.
He's at a point where maybe he's not like an elite type of pass rusher that he was, but like the dude still has juice. Like he's almost like Jerry Hughes, where he's like, he might not get a billion sacks or whatever, but he's just gonna be as disruptive and pressure happy as possible, which is like, more than a lot of teams have, honestly. So shoot, where were we going before we got sidetracked about Melvin Ingram?
We're gonna wrap up what the Josh Allen do. That wraps up that segment. Where else would it wrap up besides with Melvin Ingram talk? So
there you go.
We're gonna move into the takeaways now. We already kind of prefaced it a little bit, but defensively, the Bills, it wasn't their best outing. And I know you might be saying, what do you mean? Like, they allowed 42 points. What do you mean they didn't play a great game? I know, right? So yesterday, the Bills defense allows 552 yards, 6 drives of 50 or more yards, forced 2 punts out of 11 drives. Not, again, as you said, the coverage throughout the day was largely fine, largely serviceable. And I understand the argument of you're going up against Patrick Mahomes, Travis Kelce, Tyreek Hill, and you're doing this without Tre'Davious White. So really you can only hope to limit them, right? You can only hope to keep them in check, and your offense can kind of overcome that. I think the offense lived up to its, end of the deal, scoring 36 points and giving you the lead twice with less than 2 minutes remaining in the game. Again, I think the offense is putting you in a position to win there. The defense in that case just needs to make a play. And again, I've tried to think through all the counter arguments. I understand the counter argument of maybe the plays just weren't there to be made. Like maybe there were no balls that were really in the vicinity to be intercepted, or maybe, just things like that. Maybe the plays weren't there to be made, but they had 2 sacks yesterday. one of which was a Patrick Mahomes running out of bounds, like slightly behind the line of scrimmage that was credited as a sack. So if you take that out, they had one sack.
Which
They
was
had,
Ed Oliver,
which
who
was
this
at Oliver,
podcast stands
who's
and
very good.
loves forever, by the
All
way.
right. This stat, I know this kind of goes into your takeaway, so I won't really go in on this, but this stat really tells the story defensively, at least in my opinion. They had 3 quarterback hits on 24 hurries. They hurried Patrick Mahomes 24 times and only hit him 3 times. If you are only getting hands or hitting Patrick Mahomes on 1 out of every 8 pressures, that's obviously you are not that doesn't bode well for success. That's not a recipe for success. And Mahomes kind of just ran all over the backfield, did well on the ground, bought time, and just the defense just didn't make any plays. They just did not come up with the plays when they needed to. What did I just say? Innumerable is the word I was trying to say. Numerous missed tackles throughout the day or shed tackles. Just I think Leonard Fournette a couple weeks ago said something along the lines of, "Yeah, the Bills just aren't a good tackling team." Very evident yesterday. Bills not good in tackling. And not great games from Tremaine Edmonds or Matt Milano. Like I like Tremaine Edmonds. I try to stand up for Tremaine Edmonds, but I feel like every time he could have made a bad decision yesterday, he did make a bad decision, and he was placed in the position to make bad decisions a lot. And again, Milano, the past 2 times the Bills have played the Chiefs, the Bills have not had Matt Milano. So the narrative, at least part of the narrative or the discussion leading into this game was, okay, we got Matt Milano now, so maybe the defense is going to pick it up. Maybe that's what we need to limit Kelsey. Kelsey largely, besides the touchdown, I feel actually I take that back. Kelsey had a good game. He made 2 very good plays, but Milano, not that great of a game from him, or just linebackers in general. Again, if the Bills defense comes up with 1 or 2 more sacks, or if they get an interception, or just 1 or 2 more big plays, because they didn't really generate any. So just 1 or 2 more big plays, and I think the Bills win this game. I seriously think this game came down to, it would have come down to an interception or a big sack, a sack that was more than 6 yards or whatever. If they get Mahomes down 15 yards behind the line of scrimmage that one, or whenever he's that far deep, or Tyreek Hill that one time he was 15 yards behind the line of scrimmage, or force an interception, the Bills win this game, because I think that's all they needed. I think, they ride off that momentum, the defense does, and we're not talking about this right now.
Yeah. I'm gonna use this to segue into my first takeaway, which is basically just, there's been a discussion in the last couple of years about I saw that. There's been a discussion in the last couple of years in the analytics community about like the value of pressure versus sacks, and like pressure is obviously important. It might be more important, or at least more important than we think, than sacks, and sacks might be overrated, blah, 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 blah. And to a certain extent, they're kind of right in that pressure is important. And that guys like Jerry Hughes and Brandon Graham, guys who don't get like tons of sacks, Melvin Ingram, in many years of his career also wasn't a huge sack guy. But those types of guys get a lot of pressure, and pressures lead to turnovers. They lead to bad throws. They lead to bad decisions, etc. So pressure definitely has its value. But yes, Jessica, thank you. Jessica says pressure without containment is meaningless. And the Bills yesterday got plenty of pressure on Mahomes, but after a certain point, against a quarterback like Mahomes, pressure is not good enough.
Mm-hmm.
You have to be able to end the play when you have him, because if you don't, he escapes and he throws 10 yards to Travis Kelce, or he throws 5 yards to Tyreek Hill and he takes it 70 yards to the house. That's just how that goes. And in most circumstances, pressure is fine. Pressure is fine. And it'll be good enough to do what you need to do. But against a guy like Mahomes, and it's again, the opposite is true for Josh Allen. pressure is good until you play one of these two guys, and then you just have to be able to bring them down. And like, it's so funny watching these two against pressure because Mahomes will like dinker and putter around a little bit and kind of twirl around for a bit. And Allen's just like, nope, I'm going to smack you in
I'll
the
go through
face.
you, yeah.
I'm going to jump over you. I'm going to do whatever else. I'm just going to be a freaking bull. I don't care.
It's incredible.
Just, it is finesse versus just pure strength. And they both work for each quarterback.
Yeah.
And it's great. It's what makes them fun to watch. It's what makes them fun to compare and contrast. That they're so similar yet so different for the types of players that they are. But yeah, I mean, pressure is a great thing. This Sean McDermott defense, since it's gotten into Buffalo, has been really good with pressures. It has never been amazing with sacks. And after a certain point with a quarterback like Mahomes, you have to start sacking him. And that's hard. It's a very hard thing to do.
Right. Easier said than done, but
it is also not as impossible as the Bills made it seem yesterday. Yeah. You got to be able to
40%. 40% of his dropbacks, they had pressure on him. And they brought him down realistically once. Hit him 3 times. Yeah. Like, again, just one or two more sacks, one pick. The Bills win the game. That's what it comes down to. It's what it comes down to is a lack of big plays defensively. And there are a lot of people talking about the coaching decisions. I do want to talk about, I understand why they played, relaxed coverage, prevent defense, if you want to call it that, with, 13 seconds left in the game. But also, I kind of would have preferred, maybe this is just in hindsight talking, right? Like, because I understand the result of what happened when they didn't do this, but like, kind of just want them to play defense at that point. Don't give Tyreek Hill the opportunity to pick up 40 yards or whatever. Just, play defense. But
a part of me thinks that, and I have to say, I have no evidence to say one way or the other, but a part of me just thinks that, that slant that he took to the house on the previous drive just had them scared. Like, if we just keep playing our defense, they're going to do that again, and maybe that's true. Maybe.
Yeah.
But maybe it's not. Like, I don't know. It just seems like playing that far back when they still have timeouts left was a bad idea. Just because I mean, if they didn't have any timeouts left, okay, leave the middle of the field open, because they're not gonna. They will literally not have any time to get up to the line and spike it and run another play in 13 seconds. It's not gonna happen. We saw that in the Dallas game, kind of, sort of. Very, very different circumstances, and Mahomes probably knows to give the ball to the ref, not to his center. But like, after a certain point, you really just have to. Part of me wonders if, like, the idea of like sticking to a certain process and having like that in your mind at all times kind of hurts that time when you're in the moment and you need to think of something different. Mm-hmm. And McDermott, as we all know, very process-oriented type of guy. It's what has helped build this great team in Buffalo. Like, I'm not going to sit here and say he needs to start being more spontaneous in life. I'm not a Cosmo magazine, but
he needs to live, laugh, love more.
But part of me just wonders, like, it kind of just feels like this is what he thought this was what they were supposed to do, because this is what he's done in every other situation like this, because in no other situation are you playing against Patrick Mahomes. And I think after a certain point, you kind of just have to say these two guys, Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen, are just built different from every other quarterback in the NFL, and you need to treat them as such. And in that case, I think what some people are saying in the comments about just Just hold them, just flag them. Who cares? Like, might not be wrong.
Frustrating. It's a 5-yard penalty, so
Yeah,
don't let him catch it. Give him give him 5 yards all day.
We've seen like at the end of games like John Harbaugh when the Ravens are getting ready to punt and they'll just like hold dudes and they'll just run out the clock. Now that's different because you're in control of the ball at that point and you can just do that. But regardless, like, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. I am very tired and my memory is very sporadic right now. But they don't like reset the clock after a penalty, right? Like they don't say like, oh, well, the play started with 13 seconds, a penalty occurred, therefore you need to put the clock at 13 seconds. Like that's not how that works. You just like tackle everyone at the line of scrimmage and just slowly kill them with bug bites. Slowly kill them the 13 seconds with 2-second bug bites or whatever.
Jason Taylor writes, on that last pass to Kelsey, who was Wallace covering? I didn't see a wide receiver on his side of the field. Not a great night from Levi Wallace. Just defense in general.
And Levi Wallace has had a good season, especially after Trey White.
Season, yeah.
After Trey White went down, I think that was like a big concern. Was like Levi Wallace and Dane Jackson. How are these two going to hold up? Both of them actually played fairly well throughout the rest of the year. But yeah, this game was always going to be a bad matchup for the corners, just because nobody in the NFL is remotely close to being as fast as Tyreek Hill. But like the Bills corners in particular, just like are not that athletic. Like Levi Wallace is like, the reason he was undrafted was because he's not an athletic person. He's like a 4'6" dude.
Yeah.
He wins by playing with really good technique and being just really smart in coverage. He doesn't win by being an athlete, and that was very obvious in yesterday's game.
Yeah, there were a few ticky-tacky penalties as well. Like the Dane Jackson hold was.
Yeah, I mean, yes, but honestly, overall,
I'm not blaming the officiating whatsoever.
No, like, and I'm not saying you were, but like overall, the way yesterday's game was called was probably how most NFL games should be called. Like, yes, the Chiefs' offensive line was holding a lot, sure, but like holding kind of happens on every play. And most offensive linemen, including myself, will tell you that it's not holding if it's not called. But you know, you gotta let things play out. And I think the referee crew actually did a pretty. I'm shocking myself saying this. Referee crew yesterday was pretty solid. You know, especially on that Gabe Davis sideline non-catch, which like at first definitely looked like a catch because he got both of his feet in bounds. And like, if I had seen that play as a referee, I'd be like, oh yeah, great catch. That's a catch. But the ball was being bobbled and it wasn't a catch. I was like, oh, all right, good call. And to make that in real time, it was like, oh,
impressive. Yeah.
Impressive. You know, like, so good on that particular refereeing crew for being able to do that. And yeah, that's what the NFL wants, right? Like the NFL wants close games. They also don't want referees to be the subject of all the post-game discourse,
right? Yeah,
and it wasn't. We were all talking about Josh Allen versus Patrick Mahomes yesterday. We were not at all any point. Nobody said, "Oh, well, the referees didn't do this. The referees didn't do that." Blah blah blah. Yeah, so it was good on that part, and that honestly is what makes a game much more enjoyable to watch. It's just being able to watch it and not see like, oh, flag here, oh, flag there, oh, flag here, oh, another play, another flag. It's like, yeah, whatever.
As Devin brings up in chat here, the most egregious and disgusting no call of the season, though. What about the no call on the Tyreek Hill taunting? David, there were children watching this game.
Children.
And Tyreek Hill gave the peace sign to Matt Milano as he ran past him. What is that teaching the
Here's the thing. Should that have been called? Yeah. Because I've seen, like, I remember Golden Tate on Monday Night Football being called for waving at a Rams defender on the way to the end zone. And that was before we started, like, emphasizing taunting as a thing. So, yeah, should that have been called? Sure. Would it have made a difference? No. Like,
Moral
because
victory.
the Bills went down and scored another touchdown. Like,
Yeah.
that didn't matter.
Right. No,
And it shouldn't
it
have
doesn't matter. But it's just like, why are you going to have the rule
Oh, I
if when
agree.
it's, most evident you're not going to call it? The
Yeah.
rule simply cannot exist next year at this point. If you're not going to call it in that instance,
Yeah.
what's the point of it
Taunting is a
existing?
dumb rule, and then trying to emphasize it as like something that you need to focus on as a referee is so stupid because it's all about judgment call on like what is and isn't taunting, and every official is going to view that differently. So why even do this? Like, for what? For what?
Again, but you need to get that stuff out of the game, right? You can't have dudes having fun there. So, all right. I think it's time to move on. Gabriel Davis had a great game. This is a pro Gabriel Davis podcast for those who
Always
have watched for a long time. We've had a lot of love for Gabriel Davis. The dude is incredible, and this was the best game of his career, and he's had a few real good ones. It's wild that I'm saying this, right? He had an 8 reception, 200. Is that a 1 or a 7? I think a 201 yards, 4 touchdowns for Gabe Davis. 4 touchdowns, 200
playoff
yards.
Record.
Playoff game. Playoff
record for receiving touchdowns.
I knew it when they drafted UCF wide receiver Gabe Davis in the 4th round. I was like, he's one day going to set the playoff record for most touchdowns in a game. I didn't say, why didn't they draft Antonio Gandy Golden? That was a different guy. That was different Kyle Silagyi. But
hey, 4th round receiver for receiving touchdowns in a playoff game.
Good job.
I mean, let's go.
That's good. And like, again, I saw a tweet yesterday that was like, it is criminal that the Bills didn't win because Gabriel Davis put the nastiest route ever on a corner, made the dude fall, or on the DB. I don't know what, the position.
Mike Hughes.
It was Mike Hughes to a corner.
Hilarious.
Nastiest route. Literally fell down. And no one's going to remember.
Fell directly through the earth. Like, that man is in China right now. And that was 4th and 13. I am watching that play. I'm like, this is too much. Like 4th and 13. They can't get this. And not only do they get it, Gabe Davis is wide open. And I'm just
wide
like,
ass open.
How did that happen? And then you look at the replay and you're like, that is the nastiest thing I've ever seen in my entire life. What? Like, that was just insane. And it's not even like an over exaggerated move. He was just like, it was like a snapshot. It was like in and then right back. It was amazing. I mean, and somebody who's like kind of tall and lanky and doesn't necessarily have like incredible change of direction, to be able to do that is absurd. Also, and because of that, shout out to future Giants offensive coordinator Chad Hall for coaching this man up over the last 2 years. He has been awesome, and I'm going to miss him when Brian Daboll becomes the head coach of the Giants.
I've seen a lot of people. I'm not blaming Twitter because Twitter generally is dumb, but I've seen a lot of people like, from numerous fan bases, it's like, if we get Daboll, I hope he brings Dorsey. And it's like, Ken Dorsey, I think that's kind of been the idea all along, is that Ken Dorsey is going to replace Brian Daboll. And also Brian Daboll has the Sean McDermott, Brandon Bean connections. It wasn't a Daboll connection that got him here. It was the McDermott connection. So why wouldn't, if Ken Dorsey has the option, why wouldn't Ken Dorsey stay in Buffalo with presumptive future MVP Super Bowl champion Josh Allen?
Do you, as Ken Dorsey, want to be the offensive coordinator for future Angel of Earth Josh Allen, or do you want to be supervising a quarterback battle between Mitchell Trubisky and Daniel Jones?
That sounds like my personal hell. I cannot think of a less in New York. In New York. Oh my God. I think Ken Dorsey's made up his mind. And Josh Allen today in his year-end press conference was like, "Oh yeah, I'll go to bat for someone in-house," and wink to the camera, Ken Dorsey. So, but regardless, sorry for the tangent, but yes, Gabriel Davis is incredible. And he always has been, right? He's had a few like rough goings of it. I don't know, here and there, but largely since coming into the league has never really played like a 4th or 5th round rookie, whatever he was. He's always played above that draft status, to the point now where look, if the Bills come in or bring someone into platoon with him next year, like they did a la Emmanuel Sanders this year, I don't know what they're doing. Gabriel Davis is ready to go, maybe as a number 1 receiver, certainly as a number 2.
We all want to blame the defense. 6 points for the offense against Jacksonville. Did they play Jacksonville yesterday? I didn't see that.
Devin,
Hmm.
I understand what you're saying, Brian. I understand what you're saying with, then the game's at home. If the offense puts up more points against Jacksonville, wins the game is presumably at home yesterday, which, you're not in Arrowhead. But again,
Okay.
the offense, I think, did its job and then some yesterday. Devin just writes Jacksonville playoffs. But yeah, Gabe Davis. Great game. He's the number 2 next year, and presumably for the next while here. And your second takeaway also has to do with Gabe Davis a bit.
Yes, it does. And as soon as I find, there we go. Cover One Roundup, always 100%
This is what you love
prepared.
to see. Yep.
So the Bills are in an interesting position. Stephon Diggs is the number 1 receiver. We all know that. Stephon Diggs is amazing. Gabe Davis, I think after this game and the end of the season that he's had is, I think, pretty entrenched as a number 2, not just because he's a good receiver, but because he can function in so many different spots. He can be the outside receiver. He can be a great slot receiver. And then you can use him as like this almost H-back kind of guy who can make blocks because he's a good run blocker. Like, this dude's awesome. Gabe Davis is awesome. He's just awesome. I can't say enough about it. But now we're in a position where what's after that? Because Cole Beasley can still play good football. We saw that yesterday. He made a couple of really good catches and plays. But he's got 1 year left, and the Bills are kind of up against it in the cap room terms of talk.
Yeah.
And that's not a sentence, but whatever. You all know what I'm saying.
Right, they're up against it in the cap room.
So they can get rid of Beasley and save a couple million that way. After that, I mean, Isaiah McKenzie is a free agent. Let's be honest. If Daboll goes to New York, he's taking Isaiah McKenzie with him.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's like the guy that has stayed with Daboll through all these years since he's been the offensive coordinator. It's because Brian Daboll loves using Isaiah McKenzie the way that he uses him.
Yeah.
And again, Chad Hall, another guy that Chad Hall has helped develop into like an actual receiver and not just a gadget and return guy.
Yep.
Like, the Bills don't win that second Patriots game without Isaiah McKenzie as a receiver. So I assume that he's gone. Emmanuel Sanders, 1 year contract, he's gone. I think so. I mean, maybe he wants to stay. Maybe he retires. He's getting up there in age. So then you've got Diggs and you've got Davis and then Jake Kumaro. Like, are we going with touchdown Jesus for the 2022 season? The answer is no. Like, that's not actually their plan, I don't think. But the other thing is, this seems to be yet another draft that has a lot of wide receiver talent, because it feels like almost every draft has a ton of wide receiver talent.
Insane dudes.
And I'm sure they'll get some veteran guy because they like having veteran guys in that space. They just like having veteran guys in every position.
Right.
But it's a question mark. And you know what? If they roll into the season where it's Diggs and Davis and just a couple of whoever's and and probably a rookie, I still feel fairly confident in that. Bryce Davis brings up an interesting point. Cordero Patterson would love that if Arthur Smith actually lets Cordero Patterson leave Atlanta, which I don't think will happen, because Arthur Smith actually figured out the right way to use Cordero Patterson. Like 10 years later, someone figured out how to use Cordero Patterson the right way.
A couple years ago, like 2018, after I saw how they were using McKenzie, in kind of these gadget ways. I was banging the table for Cordero Patterson. I was like, dude, if Dable could figure out how to get something out of Isaiah McKenzie, he would make Cordero Patterson an incredibly fun player, and it just never worked out. So, and it looks like now when Patterson's probably going to get paid this offseason. I don't know if I would pay Cordero Patterson, but I hope someone else does. If he's in New York, fun. But also there was some Kadarius Toney talk up here. I'll always talk about Kadarius Toney. I think Toney is a better version of McKenzie if Dable goes to the Giants.
Sure.
Can be used similarly for sure.
But the other thing with Toney, I mean, Toney has had injury issues going back to Florida in college. And it showed up again this year. Like when Kadarius Toney's on the field, he is an electric player. Got to stay on the field. That's just that's the starting end of it. Some other people are saying speed and yak. I agree, and it makes me wonder about Marquez Stevenson, who they drafted last year. Obviously, they drafted in with the hopes that he might be the return guy. Didn't exactly work out that way because he was more or less the exact same as Isaiah McKenzie in that regard. Maybe he improves in that role and is better in his second year, a little bit more grounded and can just like not fumble or make so many bad decisions. Hopefully, we'll see. But he was never like a great receiver in college from what I am aware of. And maybe he can develop into that type of guy, or at least into like a reasonable player for the Bills, but that's not exactly someone I am banking on. You need to have a certain level of security for the wide receiver room because they use so many 3 and 4 wide receiver sets. Like you need to be able to feel confident in the 3 or 4 guys that you're sending out there whenever you go into those sets, which is often. And right now it doesn't look like they will have the guys that they want. And honestly, maybe they do keep Cole Beasley throughout his final year. I don't think that would be a bad decision because he can obviously still play. Like that's very obvious to me. He can still play. He is not quite the same player that he was in his first 2 years, but he can still play. I do wonder about the future of this wide receiver room, and I think they need to be a little proactive about it for the longevity of Josh Allen's career and for this offense as a whole.
Yeah, I wouldn't bet on it. I wouldn't place any amount of money on it using Underdog Fantasy, but promo code Cover1. But depending on how the board shakes out, wide receiver is like a sneaky position that the Bills could go in round 1. Like, obviously, I'd prefer a guard. I'd prefer a corner over another wide receiver. But, like, if there's just a dude sitting there is their draft position, it has to be finalized at this point, right?
Probably I think they were 28th. Am I remembering that correctly? Someone fact check me on this.
Who's the Penn State receiver? Dotson? Is that his name?
Jahan Dotson, yeah.
Yeah, if he's there, no, you're not a Jahan Dotson guy.
Oh, that's not what I said. I just don't know if he'll be there.
Well, he won't be. But like if the board shakes out that way, like Treylon Burks or Treylon Burks, I'm just getting into draft stuff. Obviously, the Bills just were almost on a Super Bowl run. Give me a break. But, I know, right? But I've heard him described as a 6'3" Deebo Samuel, which to me seems like
the Bills are slated to pick at 25.
25. Thank you, guys. Thank you. Very much appreciated. So 25, again, the odds of one of the top guys being there, slim. I think
slim.
Once you get past early 20s.
And I think Brandon Beane knows that. And Brandon Beane is known for trading up for getting a guy that he wants. That being said, something that I thought was interesting in the draft where they got Gabe Davis, which was 2020. So they didn't have a first round pick, so they traded that to get Stephon Diggs. Second round pick was AJ Epinesa. Third round pick was Zach Moss. Fourth round pick was Gabe Davis. And that was another draft class where it was like super, super deep at receiver. And my personal belief is that when you have a draft class that's like historically deep, and like there's a lot of like deep strength in a lot of receiver classes just because there's so many receivers,
right? So many guys
in now. But that 2020 group was like insanely deep. Like it's kind of crazy if you go back to that class. It just how deep that class was. But in those cases where you just have like historically great classes of a particular position, if you're in a spot where one of your guys at maybe a stronger position of need just like isn't quite there, dip into that historically deep class and just take a guy. And I think that's what they did with Gabe Davis, and it's paid off in huge amounts for them. I mean, imagine drafting Jalen Reagor ahead of Gabe Davis. Like, come on. What are you doing, Philadelphia?
couldn't be me. Couldn't be my team.
Could not be our Buffalo Bills.
No, they only make good draft picks.
Even though I just mentioned AJ Epinesa and Zach Moss. Anyway, so I think that there's the likelihood of them drafting a wide receiver in this upcoming draft is probably pretty high, I would imagine.
At some point, certainly.
Yeah, it just makes sense. And somebody else that the comments keep talking about is Isaiah Hodgins. I liked Isaiah Hodgins coming out of college. I don't know what exactly he offers that other Bills receivers currently don't.
And also, like we're what 2 years deep on Isaiah Hodgins. I feel like, I mean, I think he's been the first year on injured reserve, so obviously he couldn't play in this year. I don't remember what his status was, but he had a lot of buzz coming into the offseason, into preseason, and he just didn't really show much. So obviously he can take a year 3 jump, right? Josh Allen year 3 jump buzzword, but we're going to see. Are we going to see the Josh Allen year 3 jump out of Isaiah Hodgins? This is what the people are asking. Maybe. No, but just to wrap up receiver talk, I think, obviously it would be really fun to go up or however you do it to grab one of the top guys, but it's more likely that they just, again, day 3, grab a talented dude. And I mean, especially if Chad Hall sticks around, let Chad Hall develop. I trust Chad Hall to develop wide receivers at this point. Why do you like Hodgins? He is too slow. He has hype, but so does Davis. That's kind of what you were saying.
I mean, he is a great value Gabe Davis. We'll put it that way.
Walmart Gabe Davis.
I mean, until proven otherwise, that's my thought. That's my thought on Isaiah Hodgins. And for the record, I liked Isaiah Hodgins coming out of college. And he might turn up to be a solid player in the NFL. I just don't think he's somebody that me or anyone in the Bills organization is going to bank on to be a legit player.
Tanner Gentry might get a chance. He's earned those reps selling PS5s this year on Twitter, so he's getting those reps. It would be nice to see that year 3 jump out of AJ Epinesa again. Heard it here first. Josh Allen year 3 jump coming out of AJ Epinesa.
Listen, I mean,
out of Zach Moss.
Honestly, I liked both. I liked AJ Epinesa where they took him. I wasn't like a huge AJ Epinesa guy. I liked Zach Moss, especially where they got him. Them in year 2 have been major disappointments, and I'm hoping that at least one of them, just one of them, turns out to be a good player. They don't need to be great, just like a good, solid player. Otherwise that's going to be a pretty rough draft class where the best players. Zay Jones is a free agent, but his father says no.
You got to play with a real quarterback, Derek Carr. Derek Carr's good.
Derek Carr is good.
Right,
let's not have a Derek Carr slander on here, but like. Derek Carr is not Josh Allen.
To give Robert Jones credit, right, which is what this podcast is all about, right? We're giving this is the Robert Jones Roundup. But when Zay Jones did play with Josh Allen, he wasn't playing with the Josh Allen of today. He was playing with rookie Josh Allen, who again was playing with Kelvin Benjamin and
Sure.
Andre Holmes. So he wasn't playing with current Josh Allen. That being said, I don't want Zay Jones playing with current Josh Allen.
Well, and let's also be clear, like Zay Jones has actually made some decent improvements, some actually pretty noticeable improvements since he got to the Raiders, and the Raiders think very highly of Zay Jones. Like he's been very good with them, and I don't even think the Bills like hated Zay Jones. They gave him plenty of chances, that's for sure. I don't know. I would be surprised if they actually brought Zay Jones back, but you never know. You never know what's going to happen.
But what does he offer to this team?
Well, and that's the other part of this is that what they have with Zay Jones is probably already there with Gabe Davis, because Gabe Davis is awesome.
And again, they got rid of Zay Jones 3 years ago because they made up what he offered elsewhere. So it just. I know, Richard. I'm sure you were joking with Zay Jones as a free agent. It's just
you were joking. We were not.
I will never joke about Zay Jones ever.
Never.
Okay. So we're an hour and 5 deep.
Robert Jones is gonna get the StreamYard link and just come right in like the Kool-Aid man.
I just read a comment that I'm not gonna put it on the screen, but I almost made a joke along similar lines earlier about Tyreek Hill, and when I said should the children be watching this, the joke was going to go off that. So you guys understand where I was going, where I eventually was going with the Tyreek Hill joke, but I held off. Okay, so to wrap up here, we're an hour and 6 minutes deep now. Let's just wrap up. David, is this season a success for the Buffalo Bills?
Initially after last night, I would have said no because this team was primed and ready for a Super Bowl run, and they obviously didn't make it. I still call this year a success because it firmly and completely cements Josh Allen as an elite level quarterback, which is not something that the Bills have been able to say in 30 years. And it's pretty freaking cool to have Josh Allen as your quarterback. So, yeah, I will call it a success purely based off of that. I understand if no one else wants to. I understand that. I empathize. I sympathize and agree to a pretty strong extent. But for me, yeah, having Josh Allen as your quarterback and him being the type of quarterback that he is makes you feel pretty good.
I mean, it certainly wasn't a bad season. It certainly wasn't a disaster class season. I wouldn't say that, but as Spin writes, no, it's Super Bowl or bust. They went into this season, the Bills. I'm sure the Bills would be the first ones to tell you that they didn't live up to their expectations this season. I mean, this was a show that earlier in the season with when Rob was still co-hosting with me, we predicted them to lose like 2 or 3 games total and win the Super Bowl. They lost 6, one of them to the Jacksonville Jaguars, and they're out in the divisional round. Granted, it was an all-time game, probably should have won that game, but when your entire offseason is designed around improving the defense in such a way that you can defeat the Kansas City Chiefs in the playoffs so that you can get more pressure, so that you can take him down, and that ultimately will hypothetically help you win, and you get 24 hurries that results in 3 hits and 1 real sack. I mean, again, it's not a failure, but I cannot call it a success. It wasn't a bad year, but I'm not ready to say like, oh yeah, it was a great year that we'll look back on fondly. We'll look back on moments fondly. We'll look back on games fondly for sure. But when I think back to the 2019 season or the 2020 season, I mean, obviously this was a better team than the 2019. Yeah, this was a better team than the 2019 team. Comparable, not as good as the 2020 team, but comparable. But didn't achieve the type of success that it was set up to achieve or set out to achieve. And for that reason, I can't necessarily say it was a success. I am fumbling over my own words, and people are talking about Traylon Burks in the chat. So
it's time.
It's time. Jason also had a good question. I don't know if I can find it. Is Cover 1 Roundup continuing now that the season is over? Great question. Yes, but not next week. We are taking next week off to kind of not reassess, but kind of refocus. And then we'll be back
more news will happen in the next week. Hopefully, with things like coaching changes, we'll probably have a lot to talk about with that. So it'll give us a chance to actually have all that settled and realized, hopefully. And we'll be back in a couple weeks.
Yep, we'll be back in 2 weeks with free agency stuff, preview, draft stuff's going to be starting soon. So make sure to stay tuned for all of that on the Cover One Roundup and also on the Cover One YouTube channel in general with the wide variety of podcasts that we have here. One of which is starting in 50 minutes, the air raid hour. So stick around for that if you are interested. Make sure to follow Cover One on social media, on Twitter at Cover One, on Instagram at a similar handle. I think it has some hyphens. On TikTok, Facebook, everywhere you follow people on the internet, Cover One is there. Make sure to subscribe to Cover One Premium if you are interested there. You will have access to the Cover One Premium Slack where you can talk about football, the Bills, about football in general, about life in general. Wordle, there's Wordle chat going on in the Cover One Premium Slack, so you can talk about anything you want over there with us, with a bunch of other fans, football fans, Bills fans, etc. You get access to the Cover One Premium Slack through Cover One Premium. Yes, I think I hit all that. So I'd also check out Underdog Fantasy. Use promo code Cover One. Make sure to follow David on Twitter at
DFoxy, at DFAUXY.
You can follow me on Twitter at Kyle Silagyi. Thank all of you for watching, and we will talk to you in 2 weeks. All right. Bye-bye.